I wanted to bring up your Nala video. What did I do that was so wrong about Nala?
Well,
I wanted to talk about this whore.
Yeah. So, this is a thing where we brought it up when I was talking to Andrew, Racheal's husband. You can find him at The Crucible, I believe is his channel. So basically, I am of the belief that if you are a new convert, you should not be in any type of leadership position at a church, especially as a woman, pastor. No.
And a woman should never have any leadership role in a church.
Yeah.
To begin with.
That's a red flag.
Yeah.
Basically, if you're going to church and it's like, this is the female
so
pastor.
So we'd agree.
Mm-hmm. Well, hang on. But so I don't disagree with everything you said about her. Okay. But basically, you had some tweets saying like, Jesus won't save these hoes. And I think it's reasonable to be skeptical. And, you were kind of digging on whether Nala is or is not still engaging.
She raised her OnlyFans prices after this is confirmed. She raised her OnlyFans prices after she was saved.
Right.
I think anything from that, she's full of shit.
Yeah. So I'm not here to, I support you trying to keep her accountable. I don't think that's a bad thing.
Then why did I get a 30-minute video on me? Well, I don't know. It's 20 minutes.
It wasn't 30 minutes just on you. I was going through a bunch of tweets.
Classic woman exaggerating the number.
Yeah. but the idea
Sorry, I'm still a woman.
Yeah. What can you do?
Do you think it is possible for Christ to save someone like Nala?
It's possible, but I need some evidence. I need some evidence that you've done something before we put her on a show and say this woman is saved, because it's going to deter people from Christianity in the long term if men, see they're putting OnlyFans whores as preachers in churches now. Sorry, I don't know if that's going to affect YouTube, but so I think when someone's clearly full of shit, we got to call them out on it.
Do you not see that there could be kind of a middle ground where we say, hey, it is amazing you've come to Christ. Let us encourage you in your walk with as a new Christian, while also simultaneously not saying, hey, let's make this person our preacher.
Would you let a reformed pedophile buy kids in church? They said sorry. Would you let them buy the kids?
Buy the kids?
Mm-hmm, buy the kid. Would you let them in the church freely? A reformed pedo?
No, I don't think you can be a reformed
pedophile. So
pedophile.
why are we bringing a reformed hoe who said she wanted to sleep with married men and loved to get them to cheat around married men? No, you put them in the back of the church. You say, why don't you show us that you actually put your money where your mouth is, do some work, and then come back?
I don't have a problem with that either.
So then I shouldn't have got this video.
Well, you said Jesus can't save these hoes. That's the issue, right?
Yeah, I
welcome the skepticism.
They have to save them. They have to at least delete the OnlyFans.
Well, people say she has deleted it now.
Okay, so she deleted it the day before the Michael Knowles interview. She was saved in December. She had 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months. She raised her prices and didn't delete it till the day before. And then I'm still finding Telegram chats. And then the women, it's
those, and I don't know if those look legit.
So but my point is, what you should make sure that all your shit's at least down before you come out and start preaching if you really gave a shit.
It's definitely sketchy, I would say. And I think the problem is with conservatives, so eager and desperate to find anyone that could potentially be on their side now. Like you see Bill Maher, for instance. Yeah. If Bill Maher, he's clearly a liberal, he'll say free speech is good, woke bad. Conservatives are like, this is our guy, even though he's like a Trump hater, clearly not conservative, a liberal.
He's just not super woke.
But we're just so desperate, so that's why Nala was propped up by everyone.
But I want to show what's happens, because this happens in churches all the time. Right now, you make a video defending an OnlyFans chick, but Crowder couldn't get the benefit of the doubt.
I know. I've known Crowder for a long time. Like that's a different issue.
But I don't know
Nala.
But we all know what she did on the internet. She was getting tag teamed by 2 dudes 8 months ago.
I think you should use her. I think the idea that whether or not she's truly reformed is immaterial to the fact that she's become a propaganda tool for virtue.
Yeah, but why would you want her to do that if she's going to go back later? What evidence, and this is why you have young men. I know you said some young men are going to Orthodox, but by and large, men are leaving the church.
Right. And they're leaving the woke churches, and they're going back to the really traditional, like the Roman Catholic Latin Mass, the Eastern Orthodox, the really traditional, like Lutherans or Baptists are seeing.
You have to make it more profitable for her to stay as a reformed individual. So if the issue is an OnlyFans hooker comes out and says, I am reformed, I have seen the light. And then prominent people say, we will never accept you, screw you. She goes, there's no light for me. I can't live this
no,
way.
she's not saved then.
No. I'm saying do some work. Anything. My God, could you go to a convent? I mean, she was getting tag teamed by 2 dudes. So 8 months ago. So it's like, okay, could we send her to, I don't know, some missionary or something?
And so the response from the right should be like, wow, that's
I don't know. Keep her away from the married men. You want to write your husband?
We judge them by their works. I think our response should be, we accept you, but let us see the fruit of Christ within your life. And I think people have been critical about, well, all the millions that you've made essentially leading young men to sin. I think it would be a great show of faith if she were to do something with that money.
Exactly.
Whether it be charitable to a church donation, something like that. Maybe even specifically a men's organization, because that's the group that she was predating on and exploiting.
And what you're communicating to young women is you can do whatever you want, say sorry, and here's your media career.
Yeah, that is the Catholic Church. That's right. You can go and ask for forgiveness, and if you truly mean it, it is granted to you.
And then we should be advocating for women to try to change their lives, right? I agree. It's fake,
I don't have a problem with women changing their lives. What I find offensive actually is using Christianity as a grift.
I totally agree.
And I just find that offensive.
And I agree with you, but I would say, if people begin to believe that the better grift is not in being a hooker, but being a Christian, that's winning the culture war.
And I think you could argue that, but those women tend to be so damaged, they tend to do the same thing. And what you see over long periods of time is now you have predatory women in the church.
No, I agree.
And then oftentimes young men that don't know better end up marrying these chicks.
And so I would agree with you on that, Patsy. I'm just saying, at the very least, her attempt at this grift, if it is a grift, shows that she believed the right side of history, and the profitable side of history is virtue, not degeneracy. It doesn't mean she's not a degenerate. It just means she's being like, ooh, there's more money over here. That's a good sign.
My argument is, I think it's funny how conservatives give an OnlyFans whore the benefit of the doubt, but they won't do that for Steven Crowder.
I agree with that.
And I see that same pattern of behavior. And the reason, and I see that, I see that same pattern of behavior at churches across the country. I see
feel
these
that way with Andrew Tate, right? Andrew Tate is someone who he got rich, webcam industry. There's some people who are still very, very against him for being a pornography peddler. He has since, he's Muslim now. He basically still believes, I did what I had to do, I had no money. So he hasn't really apologized for it. But at the same time, that's not the same person who he is today. But you still have conservatives who are, they basically blacklisted him because of that. Meanwhile, Nala, they're open arms. Now, I think that maybe it's not the direct comparison, because Andrew Tate is not a Christian. He is Muslim. But I do see that you have a point there. They're way more open to Nala changing than someone like Andrew Tate changing.
Simps.
Yeah. We have this idea. We have this idea that women are born angelic and innocent until some bad man somewhere does something to her to make her become a bad lady, and then she can reform and we all clap and it's great. There's no grace for men like that. When men change their ways, they used to be degenerate in some way, then they come to Christianity. There's not as much applause. They don't usually do a podcasting tour. They don't usually come out with merch, and all this other stuff, because we're seeing this as a trend, right? These ex-strippers, ex-OnlyFans girls coming to Christ. But my problem with it is it always comes with, donate to my ministry. Here's my Cash App. Buy my Jesus Loves You shirt
for $200.
Right.
I'm why can't you just read the Bible?
Traditionally in my church, we had Saint Mary of Egypt was one of our most famous and most venerated saints, because she was probably the depths of degeneracy for a woman. She was like a prostitute. She was a nympho. And when she converted, she did not start a podcasting tour or a ministry or, something where you had to give her money. It was nothing like that. She went into the desert alone for decades and just prayed and became very virtuous privately. Yeah. And generally what our church traditionally has prescribed for women who come from that level of degeneracy is something more like a monastic path, or something where, they have to take a lot of time, because it's not something you just flip a switch and now I'm good. It's like it takes a long
Can
time
I say
through
one
the
more
program.
thing? Can I say one more
process.
thing that I find annoying? I'm just going to put this out there. These people, these OnlyFans whores, keep like, oh, Pearl, I'll pray for you. I'm like, what did I do? I just said words you don't like. You got tag teamed by 2 dudes.
Like, I'll pray for you.
And I'm like, you can take your prayers and shove them because I know what you're saying.
They got real mad at me when I called them hookers. That actually
Oh, that was such a
The
funny
hoe
tweet.
pronouns. You got the hoe pronouns wrong.
Well, because there was a woman and she was like, how dare you call my friend a hooker, which there's nothing wrong with at all. Then I'm like, then it's not an insult. It's a description. Like, she could have been like, I think you are misdescribing my friend. Instead, it was like outrage. It appeared in a Hulu documentary. I'm like, dude, I think OnlyFans is just today's version of hooking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You go to a like,
Virtual hooking,
there- When they didn't have the photograph, a guy would have to go to a building to find a woman to get a show, a burlesque show or something. Now, women are going on OnlyFans, and I would say people are asking, like, what's the difference between like stripping and OnlyFans? Why would you call that hooking? Because of the personal relationship that people think they're getting.
Yeah.
You go on the app and you think you're talking to this woman, and she's giving you your pleasure and your titillation for money. I do want to clarify, though, there was some survey where they asked men, knowing that the majority of these OnlyFans, they call them models. Ridiculous.
I know.
So I'll just say this. Knowing the survey asked guys, do you care that you're actually sexting and having perverse conversations with men who are being paid to do it? They
Right.
said, no, I don't care.
Wow.
Men didn't care. They were like, doesn't matter to me.
Because porn makes men gay.
It does.
Yeah, it
literally
does.
does.
There's
It
actually an
does.
article on my Substack about how I think that happened. But this is Schrodinger's feminist, right? Women are strong and empowered when they're OnlyFans models. But also, if you call them a hooker, now she's an innocent victim and you're mean because you're a
You're
man.
probably emotionally abusive if you say that.
I think women are more sexual than men. And the reason I think that is because when media is catered to women, it's like pretty much sexuality is at the core of
Yeah.
it. So even
Call
we
her
were
daddy.
talking about podcasts
Name one
earlier.
pop star who's not a sexual.
Yeah, and as the
person.
media becomes more
Female
female
pop star.
focused, it becomes way more sexual. Where
Well, I
men,
would
it's
say
like
women get their
men-
power from sex. Like,
Yeah.
that's how they
Yes.
get into the rooms.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
sleep with their bosses. They get this information. Like, that's really the only thing that women have above men is because women control the access to sex.
Right.
So men need to not have sex with these women because that's what's giving these hoes the power.
But
what I
most,
love about-
but most men can't, and that's the problem. Is women get sexual access from a much younger age, and they sleep with a small percentage of men. So most men are not sleeping around. So it's like, again, we put the onus on what 5-10% of men that get sexual access at a young age, and then it's like conservatives tell men, well, you guys are the bad guys for sleeping around, and the men get to like 22, they look for a wife. None of the women want to be wives. They don't want to marry him. And so you're saying, okay, don't have sex till what, they're 30?
Yeah.
Good luck.
This
Yeah.
is
Well,
another
tough
big
sell.
problem, right?
Tough
With
sell.
the trad con right, the Christian right, telling everybody, well, men and women both should be virgins until they get married. It's like, but people don't get married till 30, 31.
Yeah. And that's women. And that's women
here's
picking it.
Here's the other big thing we need to think about. Women, even good Christian virtuous women, don't want virgin men. I wish they did, but they don't. If a man makes it to 25 as a virgin, even like the really nice girls at church generally don't want him. They still want the player, the guy that has experience. Because the other women, it's like a signal we send to each other as women that he's successful, he's worthwhile because all the other women want him
Well,
too.
I don't think it's that Christian women don't want virgin men. Christian women want men who are highly sought after by other women. So what you would want is like the Chad, like Deus Vult, kind of Knights Templar Christian guy with the big jaw, who is literally like, he has all these women and he's just like stoically trying to push them away, but he manages to like succumb to your
Good
temptation.
luck.
I think that
literally
worked when we all
the-
got married at 18 or 20.
Yeah,
I
that
think
is
that
literally,
worked,
like,
but it's
the
not
fantasy.
Gonna, if you're telling all the women that you must, and this is what happened to me, right? I was a smart kid. I was always in like advanced classes, and it was like, I'm going to college. I was told from kindergarten, you're going to college. You're going to have a career.
Yeah.
And when I decided I didn't want to do that, and I had my first child at 20, everyone around me, even my Christian conservative women around me who should have been supportive, were like, oh no, what a tragedy. Racheal will never be anything. Her life is over. She's a loser now. She's never going to do anything with all of her gifts because she's just a mom. And this is the overwhelming propaganda that we've had for like 60 years now, telling women, young girls, if you want to be a good girl and be successful, focus on school. Go to college. even if that means the average woman graduates with $40,000 in debt, and then spend your 20s building your career so that, because why? Because you're vulnerable if you don't have your own money. If you depend on your husband for income, that makes you vulnerable to abuse, and you should be scared.
We also have to look at what women choose and want to do. We have the freedom to do anything that we want.
That's
and
true.
Unfortunately, women are picking to be whores. Like
Well,
that's
another-
and under 35,
Yeah.
and people will dispute what exactly the number is. But anecdotally I would say a quarter of women have done some sort of sex work, whether it's escorting. And
That seems high.
And there's more OnlyFans models than teachers right now. They tried to community notes me on this, but I have it. Dr. David Baker, you can look it up. And this is the thing is, and what you'll find with a lot of female stats is stats that make women look bad are always. It's always under exaggerated how bad women are. Like, for example, the CDC says the average body count is 5 to 8 for women. But if I survey men and say 5 to 8, they're like, that would be a miracle. And it's like, if you survey 1,000 people and you're actually in the field getting feedback from people, it's a different picture.
But I feel like there is selection bias there, right? Because there's statisticians,
No.
there's an entire... absolutely.
Oh, sorry. I thought you meant for me. Keep going.
Oh, no.
Going. Sorry, I'm listening.
Statisticians, like trying to get a sample that's actually representative of the general population is something that people spend. Like Scott Rasmussen has made an entire career, launched several companies over his ability to accurately sample. So, I mean, I'm not saying that there aren't areas like London, Miami, where absolutely girls are talking about like 10 to 15 and that's just seen as the norm. But I don't think it's fair to kind of extrapolate that to also like this small rural Midwestern town.
But
It's
even
the
so,
same.
the issue that you're going to get, especially with younger women now, is that they're moving to the big cities. Like, I had a chick on my show. She was a virgin from the middle of nowhere. Do you know where she lives now?
London?
Miami.
Worst place.
I like her. No offense. If you're watching this, no offense. But it's like she's doing the same moves that even more promiscuous woman would. And she was the only out of 1,000 women, I think I believed maybe 2 that they were virgins.
Well,
maybe
Pearl, when
2,
you say that women we've had the choice for over 100 years now to do what we want, even aside from sex work. If you look at the top 20 most commonly held careers in 2020 versus 1920, they are almost the same for women.
Yeah.
The only thing that changed that was a big change was we swapped out farm labor for HR work.
But
Other than that, women still are
I just think-
secretaries, nurses, teachers, daycare workers,
Yeah.
administrative assistants. We're doing all the same stuff we did before, only now we get to pay taxes. We have to put our kids in daycare. You pay half what you make to the daycare lady. Just some other random lady's gonna raise your kids instead of you. I remember thinking this when I was 20. What a stupid, inefficient system. Who came up with this? Why do I have to bring my baby to some other lady, pay her half what I make so that she can do the job I want to be doing so I can go to my corporate job and pretend I give a shit
and
about it?
serve your corporate boss instead of your husband. And then I really think that women should pretty much never leave the home. I think when a woman is in the workplace, you have male coworkers, you build friendships, you're mad at your husband, you want to vent to the people around you. I literally never
your
leave
work
my house.
husband.
My husband and I are always home. He works from home too. So I'm always with him. I never see anyone else. The only men I see is like men from church, his family, our family, and I'm always with him. And I just think like there's such a gateway for cheating. Divorce rates will rise, and also when women make their own income, like feminism tells them, you will be unsafe if you don't have your own assets.
Right.
Then they feel more empowered to get divorced. It's great that I fully rely on my husband to support our family, because what would I do if I wasn't with him? And we're not married legally. We're married just in the church because the legal system does affect men in a terrible way.
But the issue we're going to get into is that men are punished for being traditional by the court system, because the man, if he has a stay-at-home wife, he's more of a target.
True.
And I talked to one of the guys that calculates child support, and he said if you want to have the minimal amount of risk, you need a chick that earns what you earn. And it does have the problems you described, but I'm saying, if we want traditional outcomes, we have to reward them, and right now we don't.
And that's what sucks, because there's pros and cons to everything, and you're never going to have a foolproof system.
Right.
And actually, if you do look at child custody laws, and when it comes to parental rights, dads actually have more rights if they're married to the mother, because if they aren't, they have all these extra steps and hurdles they have to go through. They have to prove the paternity. They have to do all these things.
If you're married, it's assumed paternity.
So
over
but that's, so I thought that too. And I actually, because after I think Trent Horn said that during our debate. And so I asked like the guy that calculates child custody, and you can sign the birth certificate. I can't remember the exact name, but there's something guys can sign to get the same rights.
Okay, so that's beneficial. But even if they're not married, they still have to pay child support, which I agree. Child support's
and
awful.
In California, for example, like you get after 20 years or something, you get on alimony. And the years that, from my research, divorces have popped up, it's 5 years, 13 years, 21, and 24.
Yeah, well, the divorce courts just screw men over. I mean, it's awful. No wonder why marriage
It's
rates.
kidnapping. You can legally kidnap a child. And I talk to men it's crazy. The worst ones are military. Military guys have it so bad.
And they have pretty high divorce rates as well.
And to think about how many men have committed suicide in the last 50 years. Over 400,000 men have committed suicide. And from my research, roughly 70% have had contact with family court in the last 5 years. This is literally killing men, and nobody cares. And they just say, men, man up and marry anyway. And I just think it's a poor solution. The courts have to change first.
And see, like if we're going to be talking about like, okay, what are issues or what are the solutions here? Because we've been talking a lot about issues. So Pearl, do you think the focus should just be on changing the laws?
Yeah, I think that's got to happen first, because regardless of what I say, I'm just some random chick with opinions, I mean, I can't change the laws. I think regardless of what I say, young men are looking at the market and they're saying, okay, the young women my age, one, they don't want to date me. Two, they have incredibly high standards. The quality is lower than ever before. And if I want to get married, generally they're going to have to compromise on something. And then they're going to look at the risk that goes with it, and many men just aren't going to do it. I had one guy in Texas, $1.5 million he spent on his divorce. He sees his kid every other weekend. California, he spent $300,000 trying to get his kid back. His kid speaks another language. He hasn't seen him in 3 years. He doesn't even speak the same language as his kid. These are common, especially military, because military will go for like 8 months at a time. Mm-hmm. So many military men come back. Their wife is gone, all their stuff is gone, and people will say, oh, just it's your fault because you picked the wrong woman. Oh, you didn't okay, he was gone for 8 months. And a lot of those men end up homeless.
So you think, would you agree with Jordan Peterson on enforced monogamy?
What is his opinion on it?
It was misconstrued for sure by the woke corporate press. They painted this picture of like fat incels, neckbeards
getting assigned
right.
women.
He meant socially it should be like a cultural pressure that there is monogamy, that society doesn't look fondly on people who are promiscuous or polyamorous and things like that. So basically if people feared imagine cancel culture. You got emails being like, you're a degenerate. How could you cheat on your wife or your husband? And people were like, no, I could not get a divorce. I'll lose my job, that kind of thing.
Well, I don't think that'll happen.
Well, I'm not saying I think it'll happen either. I'm just saying,
I think women.
Do you agree that society should be structured in that way?
I liked Myron had a tweet recently that said that women that cheat on their military husbands when they're deployed should face jail time. I liked that.
I don't think that's far-fetched.
No, and that's the thing. Like, military men have it so bad.
You're literally compromising the national security by doing that.
Jail time.
Yeah, jail time.
Maybe not jail
it's
time,
tough, but I don't know that I disagree.
Jail time,
Well, because they're getting paid. When a man or woman joins the army, if they get married, you get base housing.
So what happens though is they come back from the military, and what they'll do is the women will go to court and say, I've been raising the kid for 8 months. It's in the best interest of the child to stay with me.
Yeah.
Well, he's been serving our country for 8 months. How is that fair? And a lot of times women also, they can get restraining orders. So like me and you get into a fight, I get a restraining order, right? And then I can go to court and say, oh, he hasn't been with the kid in 3 months.
Andrew had a woman on his show last week this is her words. She said when she graduated high school and realized she was going to have to pay her own bills, she kind of freaked out and married her high school boyfriend because he was going into the military and was going to have this reliable income. Mm-hmm. But, several years down the line, he's getting deployed all the time. He's always busy, and he didn't pay enough attention to her. So she divorced him.
Yeah, well, ask. Seriously, ask. I was just at, and this is what you start to notice patterns. Ask any military guy if he knows someone that has a divorce horror story. They all do.
Yeah.
I went to...
Sorry, I was going to say, like, I myself, and I know a lot of other women who would flat out just not date anyone actively in the military because you have to assume they're going to get deployed. So if you're going into a relationship with someone and that, like, attention is important to you, what are you thinking?
So,
like, it's their job. They have
sorry,
to.
sorry. Adultery is illegal in the military.
Oh, good.
Oh.
But I don't know if that applies for women or.
The issue is there's so many workarounds with this stuff. Like, you know, they changed the definition of abuse to include That's why I say it's feminist language, because abuse used to be a man hitting a woman, and then they expand. Like, that's what women do first, is they change the definition of words. So it used to be abuse. Now we have emotional abuse, financial abuse, and there's just so many loopholes, and it's so confusing that women can really use the system to steal children from men. And then that causes every problem in society, homelessness, school shooters, because women are raising men. And that's just not good for society.
Well, in Quebec, which is, I mean, probably the most socially liberal part of Canada, which is already socially liberal, they have done a lot of, it's one of those places where no one gets married, people cohabitate. It's so feminist in Quebec that you actually legally cannot take your husband's last name if you are in Quebec. You can change your name to whatever you want it, but if you're married and a wife, you cannot take your husband's last name. They won't let you.
Super bizarre.
There were too many divorces, and it kind of caused like a paperwork nightmare for the bureaucracy. So eventually they just said no one's changing their name anymore. There's a lot of divorces as well. And it's interesting because in Quebec, there's also common law marriage, which is something I don't think is very common in the state. But if you live together, are conjugally together, we are going to determine your spouses. They also have...
Or if you have a ceremony, it's like, the men say, we don't want to sign up. And they're like, we're going to make you sign up.
Exactly. Right. No, actually, in some cases, they will determine couples are married, even if they say that they're not, because they want to tax them at a higher bracket. It's like, no, you guys were living together. We're going to say you're married. But as a result, so it's kind of like a microcosm of like, how far can we go, like getting rid of the institution of marriage. But one thing I think they do well is when it comes to child custody, both parents are assumed to have equal possession, equal rights to their children. And growing up in Asia, I had never met a divorced family until I went to school in Canada. It just never happened. The idea of like double-barreled last names, new concept to me. But you would usually see kids would do 1 week with mom, 1 week with dad.
And what's interesting with child custody is why women became default parents was because of the tender years doctrine. And women actually argued that we should have default parenthood because we're the ones that are better at taking care of the home and children. And now the courts have ruled that women get default child custody. And what's funny is now we have feminism where women say, no, we're equal to men. We are just like men. We can go into the workplace. We don't need being home and taking care of the kids. That's not for women anymore. So why isn't that reversed? And it's because women just have all the emotional power.
Schrodinger's feminist strikes again.
And it's not even true. Like, women are more violent with children than men.
Well, I was going to say,
you're going to talk about
I was going to say, there's a piece on my Substack about this, going over the last 45 years of data from the National Incident Study, which is far more comprehensive than the data that Michael Knowles referenced.
They always lie with it.
He picked 1 year for one CPS study, and he actually didn't even get the data right there because I went back and checked. But if you
fact checked, you were wrong.
We have 45 years now of major propaganda that has convinced the public that the main threat to women is their husbands. That if you're going to be abused or mistreated, maltreated in any way, that your husband's going to be the guy, and that's what you have to guard against. That's what you have to be careful of. But if you look at the National Incident Studies, which takes data from not just CPS, but all reporting agencies, including like women's shelters, emergency rooms, school counselors, all that sort of thing.
It's actually the migrants.
No, it's actually boyfriend, girlfriends living together, or mom gets a divorce and stepdad moves in, mom's boyfriend moves in.
If you take out stepdads,
the lowest incidence of abuse for women and children is with the children's married biological father living in the home. When you remove the married biological father, it puts both women and children at the highest risk for every type of maltreatment that there is.
Wow.
Like, not even close. So a factor of like 12 times, depending on the living situation.
Yeah, and so that's why even like women are more nurturing. I don't think that's true. Because I don't see any evidence. Like, infanticide, or in the first year, if the kid dies, police don't even really look into women. It's almost, into men, because it's assumed it's going to be a woman, because men basically never killed a kid within the first year. It's almost always women. But what happens is whenever there's something that makes women look bad, there's always a gut reaction to give her